with our death, of course, we are to meet Christ. And anyone who has this kind of feeling in his soul, for him it is quite natural to expect the soon coming of Christ. The only danger is if you go overboard and begin to try to place dates, to calculate exactly when it's going to happen, to be too concerned about specific events which are occurring and too quick to place them in categories if they fit into chapters of the Apocalypse, like this famous book that came out a few years ago, The Late Great Planet Earth. In 20 years it will be outmoded. And all the things he talked about, he has to go through and make a new book and fit them into some kind of new events. So it doesn't pay to go overboard on those details. Our approach has to be a little broader, a little higher, but just as firm. And of course, the big mistake made by people who go overboard on these details occurs when they fall into the heresy of Chiliasm, the expectation of Christ coming to earth for 1,000 years. This is a very troublesome heresy, which was widespread even in the early history of the Church, and was condemned at the Fifth Ecumenical Council. No, even earlier. It was condemned at the Second Ecumenical Council, and that's when the phrase was put in the Creed. And the kingdom of Christ shall have no end. Because the idea was that the kingdom, since it says in the Apocalypse, chapter 12, I believe, that the devil was bound for 1,000 years, and Christ came and reigned with his saints. If you just read the text straight through without stopping and interpreting it, especially reading what the Holy Fathers have said about it, you get the idea that there's some kind of period of 1,000 years somewhere between the first coming of Christ and the second coming of Christ. And that means you have to have 3 different judgments. In fact, the Protestants do that. They have a great white throne judgment and some other kind of a judgment. And it sort of confuses the whole picture of Christian eschatology. But in the universal interpretation of the Orthodox Holy Fathers, there's no mystery about it. The whole idea of the reign of Christ with his saints is occurring now. This is the Church. The life in the Church is such a blessed state because we are with Christ, we have his grace, we have his body and blood within us, that this is like paradise. And this is what people call the millennium. And this 1,000 years means the whole period. 1,000 is a round number, 10 times 10 times 10, in symbolical language means the fullness of time between the first coming of Christ and the second coming of Christ. If you expect a specific 1,000-year period, then you're very anxious for this period to come, and you begin multiplying all kinds of signs which you see. The slightest little thing that happens, you begin to cry out, this is the sign of the end, and it may not be at all. Or it may be one of those signs which occur throughout the history, like the sign of there will be many antichrists. And St. John says, even from the time when he was living, there were already many antichrists. And therefore, that is not the sign that the world is right now approaching its last 10 years. It means that this is one of the spiritual signs which is preparing for the end of the world. St. Paul himself, who was very filled with awareness of the coming end of the world and the coming of Christ, warned Christians even in his time not to be too excited about the end of the world. He says in 2 Thessalonians 2, 1-4, "Be not quickly shaken in mind or troubled, as though the day of the Lord is just at hand. Let no one deceive you, that day will not come, except the falling away come first, and the man of lawlessness be revealed, the son of perdition." This is a very important sign of the end, the falling away or the apostasy, and the coming of the man of lawlessness, which is Antichrist. And this I'd like to spend quite a bit of our attention on.